PhD postdoc here, you did participate in a lot of activities of GPS TEM, and I saw you in the SciComm, like with Sandra Singlo. How did you come to know about this career of publication managers which exists out there, and how did you prepare yourself, some of the resources you tapped into to get into this kind of career?
Right. So when I was at GPS, well, back then it was called GPS Biomed. Now it's GPS STEM. One of the requirements is to fill out the IDP on the AAAS website. Is that still a requirement, Harinder?
Yes, it is. It still is.
So one of the questionnaires on the IDP for the AAAS website, you enter your skills and your wants and needs and all that stuff, and then it gives you some suggestions of areas where you should look into, because the industry is so huge and vast, you don't know what's out there. And the top suggestion was science communications for me. So after that, I looked into becoming an MSL or doing medical information. I didn't even know about pubs, actually, until a recruiter contacted me and told me about publications. I was first turned off because publication sounds like you write, and I do not write. If you guys have participated in the writing workshop, I always stress that I am not a writer. So, but a publications manager is also like a project manager of many different projects, your abstracts, your manuscripts, and your posters. And so you have to make sure that gets to with the right strategy at the right time, to the right audience, with the right information. So one thing is, like, I didn't have this during my PhD. I didn't have anything to let me know how to apply to things in industry, because industry is the dark side, obviously. I mean, it's great that you can take all these courses and you can learn how to network, and you can meet people who come to talk, and you can learn more about their jobs and see if that's something for you. So the resource is basically GPS STEM and everything GPS STEM lets you do. And it did help. I was also able to take an extension course from GPS STEM. I did regulatory affairs. Really boring class, but really useful. It helped me understand the difference between preclinical, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. So by the time I got to my industry job, I knew what they were talking about, as opposed to, being clueless and not really sure what belongs where.
That's awesome. So it seems like GPS TEM, and I have heard a couple of times about Cheeky Scientists. You were part of Cheeky Scientists.
Yeah, also Cheeky Scientists too.
We'll get to that. I know it's like you've mentioned that Cheeky Scientists is GPS TEM on Coke. Oops, I'll delete this part from recording. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about your medical science liaison role right now. You transitioned from publications manager role, which is not quite writing role, but almost like managing medical writers and publishing.
Right.
How did you decide to sort of, seems like there are opportunities when you're in an industry to make these lateral transition, career development avenues are there. So how did you decide to get into medical science liaison role? And we want to know a little bit more about medical science role per se.
Yeah, so I was a publications manager for 4 years, and it wasn't as scientific as I thought it would be. So I wanted a little bit more of a challenge, and I thought, I do like medical communications, and I think the next transition, instead of showing doctors abstract manuscripts and posters, would be to inform the doctors personally about this new drug and this new data we have out. And I feel like it's also making a even greater impact in helping doctors make informed decisions to help their patients. So as an MSL, your job is 2 different ways. Your job is actually to have a relationship with the doctors. 1, to keep them informed about all the new data that's out there. And 2, have the relationship so that if they need anything from anybody within the company, or for example, Lilly, or if anybody from Lilly needs something from them, you can bridge the gap between them. For example, I have a doctor that wanted to be introduced to the publications team, so I made that happen. Now she has a good relationship with them. But also on the other end, like people in medical affairs wanted to get a hold of this same doctor because she wasn't answering her email in order to have her participate in an ad board. So I leveraged that relationship. I texted her and say, "Hey, these people are trying to get a hold of you. Can you check your email?" And she answered like that. And also quarterly, I update her on all the new data we have.
So it seems like it is a lot like a physician facing role.
Oh,
And
definitely.
right. And we've heard like a little bit of terminology which comes up all the time when we talk about MSL role as key opinion leaders. Who are these KOLs? How important they are, and are they all physicians or they are basic researchers also?
Um, so key opinion leaders are basically, I'd say, influencers. They're influencers in their therapeutic area. So mine is dermatologist. So usually they help influence other doctors helping make decisions about the how to treat their patients. They, for example, they are part of they're part of a university, or they teach, or they speak at conferences, or they're on leadership of a professional society, or they do clinical trials, or they publish. So any of that is influencing their the field. Um, Most of the KOLs are physicians. In some cases, they can be researchers, basic researchers. It's not this case in dermatology, but it is in other therapeutic areas. And other times, it even can be non-core HCPs, healthcare professionals, such as PAs and NPs, physician assistants, and nurse practitioners. But it just really depends on the criteria of each therapeutic area.
Okay. If there are any questions, people, please keep adding in the chat, or just add a asterisk or star or your name in the chat, and I will call you out. You can turn on your camera and ask that question directly. But I have a little bit of curiosity in terms of both the roles, publication manager and MSL. How much of similarity is there between both the roles, and what are the major differences? I know it's a different kind of communication, more like publication kind of communication, and now you're really going out there on the field and then communicating with people.
Yeah. So the biggest difference is publications manager is in-house. So you go into an office every day, and MSL is field. So this is my office, is my house, and then you drive to doctors' offices all the time. Or you drive. I mean, I started in the middle of the pandemic, so most of the time it's this. You guys see what the doctors see. This is my background, and I present to them virtually so far. I have been able to go to like doctors in LA and San Diego and Riverside, but that's about it. And I have the territory of California and Hawaii.
Great. So we have a question by Julia in chat. Again, MSL, when think about that travel. So how much of travel is involved? And does that vary from position to position, company to company, or the region to region? Okay, I guess I answered, yes. But then I want you to answer that. And then yes. The second part, yeah, go ahead, answer that part. Yeah.
Okay, so yes, there's a lot of travel. And it does vary because, let's say, for example, you work for a startup, so you get half the country. So you're going to be on a lot of flights. Or if you're lucky enough, you can get just Southern California, and you're probably not going to get just Southern California in the beginning because everybody wants just Southern California. And in that case, then you're traveling only via car, and you probably will most of the time be able to drive home. You do have to go to conferences a lot, so that is different overnight travel. And usually in the non-pandemic time, you're traveling Monday through Thursday. Sometimes close by, so you get to drive on Tuesday through Thursday, actually. Whatever. You get to drive to LA and then come back home later. Or even yesterday, I drove to San Diego around 10:30. I went to one doctor, ate lunch, went to a second doctor. I had a 1:30 appointment, and then I came home by 3 o'clock. So
Mm-hmm.
I can read it too. How many conferences do you attend? But what was
Yeah.
the second? What was the second one?
I think you did answer, like, do you go work with just one hospital nearby, or you travel to many? Seems like you do travel
Oh,
to many.
many, because you have to reach all the KOLs in your territory, or try to. I mean, it depends.
Great. Kristen, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, Julie, can you just speak about conferences and how often you go to them?
So that's a little bit harder because I started in January 2020. A lot of the conferences have been canceled. So I was supposed to basically go to like one conference a month. Some are local. A lot of them are local. Only like one or two or three are national. So that means you go outside of your territory, or for me, outside of California. But lately it's all been virtual, so it's been my house. And a lot of them have been canceled because of the pandemic. So who knows what life is going to be like as an MSL post-pandemic? Nobody knows that yet. It might be, I feel like it might be more of a hybrid. Like, for example, I have doctors in Hawaii, and people might travel to Hawaii just to visit like one or two doctors once a quarter, but maybe instead of that, we'll just go to Hawaii once a year. That's a long flight. That's 5 hours.
Yeah. Vanessa and Isra and Carissa's question. Vanessa, would you like to turn on your camera? No? Okay, that's fine. So I'll ask the question. How amenable would you say your position is for people who don't have industry experience? I think this question comes up many, many times, and you may have also faced this thing. When you apply for positions, they always say, people with this many years of experience, yet you've seen people transition. So
yes, it is possible to transition straight from your PhD or postdoc to an MSL position, but it is competitive. It is really, really competitive. It's probably a very low chance you go straight from your PhD to a full-time MSL position. Some options that you could do could be going for the temp to perm. And obviously you're not going to be competing against other people who have MSL experience. And I think that's like Best MSLs or Cineos or the medical affairs company. Or you could try instead to go to, for what I did, you sidestep and you go to another medical affairs role where you learn everything within medical affairs, and then you're a strong candidate to then go to an MSL. Either way is good. I mean, you could always just try also for an MSL, but it's really hard. It was even really hard for me to go from publication manager to MSL. And it's hard even to go from academia to industry, but it's like this is hard, and then academia to MSL is like this hard. So just know there are different ways to get there, and it might not be an immediate step. You might have to do a side step somewhere, some way, somehow.
So we have
Julie, you mentioned a sidestep, and you were just talking about other medical affairs roles. Are there other industry positions that would help with a sidestep to then get into MSL?
I mean, anything in pharma. Probably not a bench scientist. Probably more where you're working cross-functionally with other people in the department. Bench scientists still like to stay in their little hole and don't like to come out and stuff.
So Isra, would you like to ask the question straight?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Thank you so much, Julie, for taking the time to speak with us. My question is, what's exactly the difference between the roles of like a medical science liaison, pharmaceuticals rep, and the KOLs? I know you kind of touched upon the KOLs, but like, what's the actual difference? Like, I'm not really sure, actually.
Okay, so a sales rep, one, you don't make as much money. And two, you actually don't need to have a scientific background. Most sales reps have a business background. They can only talk about things on label, so whatever is approved by the FDA. And sales reps are like a dime a dozen. Most of them don't have a terminal degree, and if you just tell like the front office you're a sales rep, they might just like blow you off or whatever. Your territory is smaller though, but it's also really hard to break into sales. Also, actually, all of pharma I think is hard. And then an MSL is one, you're not based on commission. It doesn't matter if they do or do not buy. If that is not your concern, your concern is if they see the data or not. So your metrics isn't how much the doctor buys or prescribes. Your metrics is how much data, or not how much data, how many doctors did I show the data to? Your territories are a lot bigger. Like I have a rep in Orange County, I have a rep in San Diego, I have a rep for Riverside. My whole territory is California because there's a lot less KOLs. As a sales rep, you see all the dermatologists or all the doctors. And you can talk about pretty much anything. You can talk about on label, you can talk about off label, you can talk about pipeline drugs. As a sales rep, you can't talk about pipeline drugs at all. And they respect you more because you have to have some kind of doctorate, either an MD, a PhD, or a PharmD. So when you call up the front desk, you're like, "This is Dr. Julie Dela Cruz," and then they're like, "Oh, well, the doctor doesn't see sales reps right now," and you're like, "Well, I'm not a sales rep," so so you have a little bit more prestige. And some doctors will see me and not sales reps.
Mm-hmm. So Carissa has one quick question about work-life balance. That's something which comes up if you have to travel a lot. How much of work-life balance do you have in your current role compared to publications manager or as a postdoc?
As a postdoc, everything's better because you're only expected to work the weekends occasionally if you're like, for example, at a conference. I know at my postdoc, you were expected to come in either a Saturday or a Sunday, and you get paid like this much. There's probably more work-life balance with the publication manager because you're only in-house. You travel to a conference once a quarter. It's hard to say how much work-life balance I have as an MSL because I've never been a non-COVID MSL. But for right now, it's pretty good. I like barely leave my house.
Mm-hmm. So we have another question from Julia. When you were doing your industry interviews, what do you think on your resume which helped you the most? And what did you get the feeling that the companies were looking from you? So I think this is a perfect time to add the Cheeky Scientist. Seems like you did participate in Cheeky Scientist, a lot of different things. Would you like to maybe elaborate, highlight the parts which are common between GPS TEM and Cheeky Scientist? If people don't have a lot of money as a PhD student postdoc to get into that, how they can, beef up their resume, especially what the companies are looking for.
Well, GPS STEM is obviously only located in Orange County, so the network is only Orange County. Cheeky Scientist is global, so if you want to work outside of California and meet other people, then you can connect with people that are Cheeky Scientists outside of California. Cheeky Scientist is on a Facebook group with everybody that's participating globally, so you can be a Cheeky on Facebook 24/7. Whereas GPS STEM is also very good, but not as quickly or as fast as people can respond. But it's local, so that's good. It is pricey. It is really, really pricey. But they both teach you how to find a job. They both teach you that applying online is a waste of time. Networking is the key. Both are good. I think both have helped me. And if you're super duper gung ho and you don't mind spending the money, do both. If it's too much money, just stay with Harinder.
Yeah, no, that's for sure a problem with our program because just one person manages the program, and our programs happen in packets, like small, and they happen whenever they happen, not like Cheeky Scientists with the whole team working simultaneously and multiple different projects. And of course, you pay and you get that. This program is free, and it's great to actually slowly start building, because I've seen people tend to get into Cheeky when really like when they are, I'm not talking about you, but I think I've heard a lot of people, they're like, I need a job, and then they get in, and again, people expect magic to happen, but then I feel like it's a slow process which you build over the period of time. So we have one question from Sanober. Is clinical science liaison different from medical science liaison? It's the same.
It depends on the company. So yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even medical science liaison between each company is different in their capabilities and what they can do. And then the clinical science liaison, I think they might be aimed more towards community doctors, so maybe less KOLs is what I feel like that is. I can't tell you for sure because it's hard to generalize, actually.
Mm-hmm. So other than talking about the mechanism of when you're applying for a job, you look at the job being posted, look at the job description. Of course, as you mentioned, you have 90% of it is networking, but you still have to, at the end, you have to go and apply for the position. So you're looking for basically the jargon keywords, and that's what you put in your resume, which is getting into the company website, right? So if there are people in the audience some people who are interested in publication manager role, and then some people who are in MSL, what sort of like terminology, jargon, or skills they should highlight in their resumes to be competitive for those roles after they have done enough networking and they have their foot into the door, and so that at least the application, the automatic, the computer software which scans the resume really picks up that as puts it on top of the list.
I mean, what you really have to do is you have to look at the actual job description and use the words in the job description to put it in your resume. So if it says something about you did something in a timely manner, put the word timely, or you do something like I don't know, just use all the words in the job description. And now I've forgotten. I've mom brain. What is the other question?
Oh, yeah, and just for both for MSL and publication manager, I believe there are some common things, but there's like some very unique skill set you have to show for these jobs.
You should do more, like, obviously as a publication manager, show that you can manage different projects at different times. As an MSL, show that you have given oral presentations, because that's what's going to happen a lot. You present a lot. One thing I want to point out is I had two friends apply for the medical writer position at AbbVie. One person's resume was really interesting, and I won't say who, but she was on here before. But it was really interesting because besides all of her PhD work, she did, she was an intern at Sandra Singh Lowe's, the Lowdown on Science. And then she was also an intern at PBS. She was a writer for PBS. And the other girl just had academia. That's all she had. She just had her academia stuff. And I told the other girl, I'm like, this resume screams academia. It doesn't show that you have any interest in anywhere in the industry. So they might not take a chance on you. The girl that had PBS and Sandra Singh Low and just all the other extra things besides academia, she got an interview and she got hired. The one that just screamed academia, she wasn't even considered and she didn't even get a phone call. So you also need to do things to show that makes you stand out. Like, it shows that you want to get out of academia. You can put that you did like the course on regulatory affairs. You did the course in communication. You are a part of GPS STEM. You should put that on your resume, and that will make you stand out and show that you really want to get out of academia.
Great. So we are at exact 12:30. I said that we will end at 12:30, but then we started a couple of minutes late. So one final piece of advice, Julie, in a minute and a half, what you would like to give to people who are interested in either in a role like yours, your previous role, or any kind of industry role to just get their foot into the getting out of academia.
Network. That's the most important thing. You can apply online, and sometimes you'll get lucky 10% of the time, but it says a lot more if you network. One, you can even find out if the person that is, you ask for an internal referral, if you like their job. So you can ask for an informational interview, and then you find out if they're cool, and if they're willing to talk to you, they're usually cool. And at the end, if you want to apply, you just ask them. Obviously, you don't go, "Hey, can you give me an internal referral right away?" Because that's bad taste in everybody's mouth.
Yeah.
You say, "Hey, I'm interested in this position. Would you mind giving my resume to the hiring manager? Would you mind putting it on the hiring manager's desk?" Something like subtle like that. Yeah.
Okay. And another question people ask when you say about networking, like where do I go network? What sort of networking opportunities? Right
LinkedIn.
now, LinkedIn. There you go. Got it.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You message a bunch of people, and you'll get a 10%. You get a 10% response rate. So basically, it is try to find all the nice people. If they're not nice, they're not going to respond. You don't want to talk to them anyways. So just try to find all the nice people.